and welcome to the 77th Bi-Monthly Breastfeeding Coalition's webinar. I am Miriam Rodriguez, the Coalition Relations Coordinator at USBC, and I'm so glad to welcome you all to today's session. This series is jointly hosted by the CDC's Division of Nutrition, Physical Activity, and Obesity, and by the USBC. Next slide, please. These webinars, referred to as the 222, are held on the second Tuesdays of even-numbered months from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern. The purpose of this series is to bring together practitioners and advocates from the field of maternal and child health to share best practices, resources, and to network and collaborate on issues of national significance. We alternate sessions highlighting the work of breastfeeding coalitions one month and the national or international organization the next. Coalition members and breastfeeding advocates from around the country can join us for these free webinars. To get all of our announcements, please join the Coalition's Learning Connection at www.usbreastfeeding.org/coalitionsconnect. A user account is required and it only takes a couple of seconds to set it up. The topic and speaker details are posted on the Coalition's Learning Connection as well as the USBC public website. You can find that at www.usbreastfeeding.org/coalitions-webinars. To streamline access, the webinars have been set up as a series. Once you register for a session, you're all set. You will receive reminders before each webinar with the topic and speaker details. We understand that it's not possible
Miriam, we might have lost your audio. Can you?
Sure. Can you hear me?
If in case you've muted your line, you could unmute, please.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Miriam.
Okay, great. So let me go ahead with that again. To streamline access, the webinars have been set up as a series. Once you register for a session, you are all set. You will receive reminders before each webinar with the topic and speaker details. We understand it's not possible for everyone to attend live sessions in the midst of your busy workday, so there is easy access to archived recordings. The webinar presentation, handout, and recordings of this session and past sessions can be found on the Coalition's webinar page. You can find the links in the chat box. The link to the webinar page is also on your webinar confirmation email. Next slide, please. As you can see here, if you go to our website at USBC, you can look across the tabs and find the webinar that is titled the CDC-USBC Bi-Monthly Webinar Series to find all of this information. So next slide, please. Great. For today's session, all participants are in listen-only mode. We will have about 15 minutes for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. However, we do hope that this session is as interactive as possible despite the virtual format. So please share your insights and questions throughout the presentation. You can type your questions as they come up for you during this session. Here's how you do that. You can go to your control panel that's going to be right on the right side of your screen. If you don't see it, it can be minimalized. If you click on the orange tab, it will pop back out. And if you see below the audio section, you'll see a tab for questions. And if you click on that, you'll open up a box that you can type in. Next email. Okay, great. So if you have any webinar-related tech problems, please send an email to coalitions@usbreastfeeding.org, and the staff will try their best to help you. And with that, that brings me to today's topic, emerging leaders in the lactation profession, co-designing opportunities and programs with community. The USBC is honored to spotlight the breastfeeding scholars of the Vital Village Network Boston Breastfeeding Coalition today. The Vital Village Network Service Learning and Leadership Model provides the platform for scholar experience. During 2018, scholars gained 784 hours in lactation education, completed over 1,000 hours of volunteerism, and served 727 caregivers and 944 children at 10 support groups throughout the city of Boston. Of those scholars who chose to self-report their race and ethnicity, 84% of the scholarship recipients identified as women of color. This service learning and leadership model allows network members to meaningfully synthesize content learned during their trainings in their volunteer experience. While in service, scholars are able to practice lactation education and counseling skills, reflect on their professional development, and gain a deeper understanding of community needs. The Breastfeeding Scholars, the Vital Village Network, Boston Breastfeeding Coalition, are committed to providing accessible and culturally relevant breastfeeding support across Boston. Participants in today's webinar will gain an understanding of critical importance of the collaborative design process to ensure that comprehensive IBCLC support pathway programs are developed to meet the needs and strength of community lactation providers and the families that they serve. So I am delighted to introduce today's presenters for this session. Erica Pike serves as the Communications and Policy Manager for Vital Village Network at Boston Medical Center, with a master's in applied nutrition.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to present. We will introduce ourselves despite Miriam's effort to introduce us. I'm going to just pause for a minute to make sure that folks can hear us. So before I move on, I'm going to confirm that we can be heard. Can Kenny and Miriam, can you please? Great. Thank you for confirmation. So thank you again to the hosts from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the United States Breastfeeding Committee. Kinkini, Miriam, and Adeline were both all so supportive as we were preparing for this presentation. My name is Erica Pike, and I am the Communications and Policy Manager with the Vital Village Network. And I joined the Vital Village Network as a former scholar, breastfeeding scholar. Back in 2016, Melody and I took the Certified Lactation Counselor training together. And through our different leadership journeys, I am now here with the Vital Village Network, supporting scholars like Melody and other members of the community to identify the strengths and skills and initiatives within the community that will best support child and family well-being outcomes in Boston.
And I am Melody Cunningham, and I thank Kinkini, Miriam, and Adeline also in the CDC and USBC for allowing us this awesome opportunity to present. I started, as Erica said, with the CLC training and have been in constant contact and involvement with the Vital Village Network and Boston Breastfeeding Coalition since. I am a mother of 5 with cumulative breastfeeding experience of about 20 years, and having been in the community that we serve, I face the challenges that we now address.
Great. So we'll be sharing a bit about who Vital Village is, our approach, and what really motivates us to do this work. So Vital Village is a network of residents and agencies who are committed to maximizing child, family, and community well-being. We organize our work with 2 main functions. We seek to better align systems that work in partnership with families. So thinking about the Department of Children and Families, the school systems, the healthcare systems, how are we better working together to support the same outcomes that we seek to get in Boston? So with that in mind, we are really in the business of building trust and relationships between those systems, and that takes time. So we've been in existence since about 2010, and we've built up our organization and collaboration space to host about 200 organization partners, as well as over 2,000 individual resident leaders who are supporting our work and continuing it forward. The Vital Village Network supports breastfeeding through our Boston Breastfeeding Coalition, which I'll share a bit more history of in a few slides, but we are able to successfully grow our model because of our service, learning, and leadership program. And our approach through the service, learning, and leadership model is thinking about how are we building on the already existing strengths and appreciating the existing leadership that exists in communities, providing additional backbone support and coordination services so that those those identified community solutions can thrive and scale, while also investing in community leadership development. So that includes, as we'll share later on, offering training scholarships, providing childcare, encouraging communities to support one another through mentorship and stipends to engage and uplift community solutions. Beyond those investments in community leadership, we also ally with strategic partners and leverage their existing resources, so we're not duplicating efforts with anyone in Boston. We live in a resource-rich community. However, many times organizations are working in parallel. So how can we better align and leverage our resources? In addition to those leveraging partnerships, we often connect our breastfeeding scholars or other volunteer leaders in the community with civic engagement service. So what that looks like is a direct application of the skills that are developed over the course of the training or over the course of a period of mentorship back into the communities in which people live and work. And so our hope is that there is a meaningful component of applying new skills so that the information, knowledge, and efforts spread through this volunteerism. And throughout this model, we provide ongoing mentorship. We are connected with a deep network of individuals who either have experience in the fields in which our volunteers are seeking to grow professionally, or have a deep skill set, whether they've studied or they have lived experience. What we like to say at the Vital Village Network is whether you have a PhD or GED, everyone has something to share and everyone has something to learn.
So I came into Vital Village the classic Vital Village way. I was fortuitous enough to see a Facebook post from another member. I wasn't a member at the time, offering the CLC class. Didn't know what it was, didn't know what it was about, but it sounded like something I would be good at because I had breastfed before. That's all I knew. Vital Village is successful in the model because it provides support to people like me to assure a diversified landscape in the lactation field. Black women are behind the curve, as the CDC indicates on its website, as it relates to breastfeeding and catching up to continuation of breastfeeding. Black women, like myself, are becoming increasingly interested in lactation education, and we hope to be able to continue to foster their advancement and my advancement in the field. Vital Village recognizes the importance of relatability. It's very hard to listen to people who don't know what you're talking about and where you come from. And Vital Village is addressing that by having people like myself talk to and relate to my peers. It's so critical, and it works. It's a very, very workable and progressive model. So participation in this coalition has never once felt like work to me. We literally are a village, and there's no obligation. Life has happened sometimes, and Vital Village recognizes that and works around it and allows peers like myself to come in at times that are workable for us. We don't ever feel under any stresses or obligations. This is truly a labor of love. And the way that Vital Village is set up, we want to give back, and we want to continue to do the work to help uplift, encourage, educate, and empower other people like me who can continue to do this work and recruit other people like me. We have a when you win, we win attitude. Community connections and encouragement for community connections and encouraging whatever happens in life is a vital component of Vital Village. They provide all sorts of support. There's food offered to us. Everybody likes to eat. We are given parking so that we don't have to make choices like whether or not we can attend a meeting because we need to find parking or feed the children, make dinner, and so forth. So in that respect, it really is a village, and they really have considered all the things that it takes to make something like this work and to encourage commitment for people like me, because obstacles come in the way, and Vital Village addresses these things and makes, I'm losing my words, I'm sorry, but it makes it possible for us to, be continuous and to be consistent in doing this. So what drives us? It's 2019, and myths about breastfeeding are still pervasive in the Black community. Culturally, we face sort of racist tones in hospitals where people don't really expect us to, the staff doesn't always expect us to breastfeed, and they aren't the most supportive. Let me see, my youngest child is 8 now, and I just could tell you stories upon stories. So the fact that we're now addressing these things from a first-person perspective really helps to dispel a lot of the myths that are continued in the Black and people of color communities and in environments. So my personal story is that I have 5 children, and with my 3rd child, I told the doctor, the pediatrician, that I was really in a lot of pain, and the child was eating a lot. And the doctor kind of brushed me off, and I was engorged, and it was terrible, and I was begging for help, and no one was helping me. Even after, so my son ended up being the first child that pediatrician had ever seen gain weight, so I knew what I was talking about. He was ravenous. After that, it persisted. He was my 3rd child, but I had never experienced anything like this. He was killing me. I was in so much pain. I was cracked. I was just miserable. My drive to do what was right for him made me continue, but a lot of women stopped. Clearly something was wrong, and no one was addressing this for me. No one was helping me. So this is where we lose a lot of people. Now that I know latching issues happen, frenulums can happen, nipple positioning and so forth, all kinds of things can be the cause for this. I can help people who would otherwise not continue breastfeeding. So yeah, we have to continue. We ensure continuity of care in the area of breastfeeding from hospital to home. We at Vital Village offer free breastfeeding support, peer-to-peer, as well as people who have now credentials behind their names to, again, ensure continuity of care.
And just to jump in a bit, so the Breastfeeding Coalition got started back in 2015 when a woman in Mattapan identified that the neighborhood in which she lived and worked, there was no place for her to get help like Melody is describing. She couldn't reach out to a neighbor. She didn't know where she could go to identify breastfeeding support when she had her first son. And yet, just across the river, like we say in Boston, which is into Cambridge, there was free drop-in support at any day of the week. And so we saw an opportunity there. She had successfully breastfed 2 of her children. She wanted to reach out and support other women in her community. Because of the Vital Village Way, we said, who else is interested in this opportunity? Who else has either the skill or the space to host this breastfeeding drop-in group? And that's where the coalition got founded. So since 2015, October 2015, just 3 months later, a breastfeeding support group was launched in Mattapan, where there was at minimum 2 languages spoken, Haitian Creole and French Creole, and they were able to offer breastfeeding support in the languages that were most spoken in Mattapan to community members. And so that was the seed that was then scaled through the service learning and leadership model, because more and more community members said, we're interested in this. We want to also open groups in our community. We want to continue to build our professional skills. And so we've then offered more opportunities for training and leadership development. So scholars enter the program usually around January. We first offer the Reaching Our Sisters Everywhere Community Transformer training, which we were encouraged by our community members. So one of the biggest things that you'll hear throughout today's presentation is that our community breastfeeding scholars are at the table with us at every decision point. So where's our next breastfeeding group going to open? Who should be staffing it? What are the trainings? When should they be offered? How are we going to even offer the scholarships? Who gets access to the scholarships? They're at the table helping us make those decisions because this was a community solution from the beginning. So how can I, as a staff person at Vital Village and someone who has the same goals as the community members to increase and maximize child-family well-being, support what they've identified as their solution, despite all of these realities that we're existing in.
Very good, Erica. In our community, we recognize that expectations are still pretty low for Black mothers to breastfeed. There's not enough emphasis on the benefits and not enough focus on achieving success. Vital Village has been changing that with things like involvement in the Black Breastfeeding Week, where we had photo campaigns and we had volunteers happily show up with their beautiful babies to nurse. We are emphasizing awareness and education in community spaces, like Erica mentioned, that are recommended by the scholars and by peers. Volunteer participation and leadership. The coalition is member organized and led. It really is driven by the needs of the scholars, which makes it so effective and feasible for people to get involved and to stay involved.
And I would say it makes it happen, but it also is much slower. So, and it's a challenge because, there are oftentimes things that need to get done, things need to go to the printer, but until we have consensus, until the coalition or the scholars are on board with things, we really don't move forward. So we are driven by our network partner organizations and individual resident leaders, which has built the buy-in for our model, but it also means that things are not at the pace of, the regular workday. We are definitely at the, we like to say we move at the speed of trust. So I'll leave it at that and move on a bit to what we've done. So this will get a bit into the nuts and bolts. We've hinted at some of these things, but our breastfeeding scholars at the Vital Village Network Breastfeeding Coalition are committed to providing accessible and culturally competent breastfeeding support across Boston. Our service learning and leadership model provides that platform for their experience. Community leaders interested in improving breastfeeding support in their neighborhood and or pursuing a profession in the lactation field are invited to apply to join our scholar program, which was just recently recognized by the International Board Certified Lactation Educators. Oh, I'm so terrible with the acronyms. It's the IBCLC, International
Board of Certified Lactation Educators.
Thank you. And we're now a recognized support organization. So our scholars are who are now in the program qualify for sitting for the exam through the Pathway 1. For those of you who are IBCLC nerds, that is a very exciting thing for us. It's huge. So this model, like I mentioned, has been designed in collaboration with coalition founders who sought to increase breastfeeding support in Boston's most diverse neighborhoods of Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan. And now there's a growing interest in this profession. Some of the opportunities that we've been able to provide are the lactation training scholarships, connections to mentors, so current IBCLCs or long-term CLCs who have a diverse experience and can share with newer members of the program. The meaningful service opportunities, I'm just going to pause on for a bit. So we are in partnership with, I would say it's something like 6 local organizations across the city of Boston. Some of them have multiple days. So in total, we have 10 breastfeeding support groups throughout the week. that are free drop-in, multilingual, usually either, well, we have them both during the day and in the evening time. And our scholars, after participating in a training, they are required to do about 50, usually it's more, 50 hours of volunteer service facilitating these groups. So they are the front lines of meeting moms where they are, inviting moms at the grocery store, wherever they are, they see a new mom, see a pregnant mom, they make sure that they know that this resource is out there.
And if I could just say, the scholars really take this bull by the horns. These groups are absolutely phenomenal, and they've grown exponentially over the years. Some of them have even outgrown their spaces and ended up having to be moved. So it's a wonderful thing.
Right, and so it's a direct application of the new skill and knowledge that's built in the training. And we provide not only mentorship, but continued learning. So there's the training that happens biannually, but then monthly we offer scholar support nights where folks are coming together at a local bookstore, talking about concerns that have come up in the group, talking through questions that have come up that they weren't able to answer, studying for upcoming exams, thinking about different clinical challenges or scenarios, working through different scenarios. And those scholar support nights are both in person, but also similar to this format where folks can join via webinar. So we try to reduce any barriers to participation in those.
So we will move along. So in addition to all those wonderful things Erica just mentioned, we've been pioneering innovations and partnerships. So we also have a connection at Bunker Hill Community College here in Boston in connection to their academic and financial advisors. And all these things happened because of the coalition. It's really, again, peer-led, and it just has been burgeoning and blossoming on its own. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. And we would love to see this model replicated throughout the country, and we think that it could happen because a need was addressed here that somebody like me didn't even know. Like, I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know that, you know, this could be something, and now it's just sort of growing on its own. And
I'm going to add one more thing about the innovation. So Melody's being quite humble, but she really set out and is committed to this goal of becoming IBCLC, and so with her support, now we have these new partnerships with local and online universities. The other thing I wanted to say is that while we've come so far from 2015, we are still hearing from our scholars that there is not enough support for them in terms of being able to take time off or fund the college courses, as well as getting the rotations in clinical settings. While we do have our drop-in support groups, and they are getting roughly over probably close to 150 hours a year in the groups of providing that clinical care or counseling care. They don't see all the extremes that a hospital or a clinic would see. And so those are two areas that we are working through as a coalition. And so as we go through the Q&A, I also invite folks who may have experience with those things to share what you all are innovating and who you're partnering or getting funding through that support those pathways.
Yeah, as Erica mentioned, the IBCLC pathways are not easy at all. They present a lot of challenges that Vital Village is doing their best to meet, but we, can only do so much. And again, if anyone has any information or any suggestions on how, because probably, I believe it's about maybe even 90% of the people involved in Vital Village who take the CLC course want to go on and become IBCLCs, which would be beautiful because it would change the current landscape and give more opportunity to educating and increasing breastfeeding awareness throughout Boston and the country. So yeah, that would be a huge impact if we could figure out how to streamline this thing and fully support scholars who want to go on to become an IBCLC. The economic impact. By providing this sort of training, you're giving power to the community. There is a good market for IBCLCs throughout the country, as a matter of fact. This is a skill that women of color can take with them anywhere, or anybody can take with them anywhere. Obviously, salaries range, but people can go into business for themselves doing this. So IBCLC pathways are really a viable option for mothers and women in the community who want to go on and create something for themselves.
Yeah, and Miriam mentioned this earlier when she was introducing our program, but in 2018, scholars gained about 784 hours in lactation education. They've completed over 1,000 hours of volunteerism and served 700 plus caregivers and 900 plus children at our 10 support groups across the city of Boston. Some of the tools we use to measure our success, I know, little baby. We utilize tools such as weekly text messages that come through to our volunteer facilitators where they complete how many volunteers were attending, how many new families were attending, how many existing families were returning, so that we can collect real-time feedback. And then they also put in requests, oh, I had a really big challenge with this. This is a new story, a really successful story of an experience. So we're always having those real-time communications. And this data goes directly onto our data dashboard. On the Vital Village website, vitalvillage.org, we have a publicly accessible data dashboard in which community members in our similar model, we have a community data work group. They've identified a type of data or information source that would be useful for them as they are advocating for their children or navigating different systems in the city of Boston, and we seek to find that data and make it in a usable and friendly manner on our website, whether it's charts or maps, things like that. So we are trying to always push back data out. So frequently we hear from our network members that there are so many people doing research on our community and we never see the outcomes. So how, similar to what Melody said about getting power from knowledge, how about empowering through data and using data feedback loops to really give the power back to community. So you can see all of our data on our data dashboard if you're interested. And in addition to both the weekly text messages, we also collect data before and after our training. One of the biggest pieces of success that we have seen so far is the adaptations we've made to the ways in which we support scholars after they've been accepted into the program. So what we heard was that the CLC exam is difficult if you have not been in school for a really long time, if you aren't familiar with multiple choice test taking. And so from that feedback, we worked alongside our coalition members and scholars who either had passed the CLC or who didn't pass the CLC and wanted to retake the exam. What would they need to feel more supported? And so we have built in 2 to 3 CLC preparatory study sessions. And then the week of the CLC, we have another 2 study sessions where we are providing childcare and food, and the scholars can really just be there and study up, do their homework. So that we've seen a big rate. I don't know if I have it written down. Oh yeah, we saw an increase in 39% of our CLC participants pass the exam from 2016 to 2018. So this collaboration stuff isn't just feel good, blah-de-da, we are holding hands and having fun type stuff. It's proven results.
Another thing I want to add is that the partnerships, one of the partnerships that we were able to secure is with a local library where we have pretty much established a permanent home. And one of the members has worked in conjunction with the City of Boston to bring in summer meals, which is a beautiful addition and another perk that we can add. It's not costing us anything, but the city is working with us and we're providing healthy meals during the summer. So it really grows and it really just sort of spreads tentacles out on its own, and people are backing what we're doing, and yeah, lots of benefits to doing this. So what drives us? Obviously, babies on boobs. There's no better way or no simpler way to put it. It's just that simple. We want to see more babies in the community being breastfed because we know that in the long run, it will help to alleviate lots of health issues, and everyone will be better off for it. So, Vital Village, we acknowledge systemic barriers that Black communities and communities of color face in breastfeeding support. We're actively working to eliminate or alleviate these barriers by listening and allowing community leadership to drive and design what we offer. Can't stress this enough. It is peer-led. We're involved, the scholars, every step of the way, and a lot of the ideas have even come from us. They don't move forward without us because it is about us. Empowering us is what is going to help change the community and our attitudes towards breastfeeding and give us more healthy babies. So by providing these scholarships and trainings and the subsequent education and social support throughout the years and meaningful opportunities to apply this skill, you're creating a coalition of almost warriors is what I like to call us, like the Dahomey warriors, right? So the pathway work groups and designing the clinical hours and becoming the support organization is what Vital Village is about, and whatever else the people need, the scholars need. And I think that pretty much sums that up.
Yeah. And it's not easy. We're all working hard every day. Our scholars are out there, like I said, on the front lines, being the warriors. So what we can do to alleviate the barriers to participation and create those pipelines for success and leadership in the community, the better off we'll be. So we appreciate your time and we look forward to hearing your questions.
Thank you so much, Erica and Melody. That was such an insightful presentation. Before we get started with our Q&A, I did hear that several people were not able to hear the second introduction, so I want to be sure that we do present Melody properly. So Melody Cunningham is a mother of 5, as she mentioned, who purely by a serendipitous Facebook post fell into the wonderful world of lactation education and support and has never looked back. She was inspired to become a certified lactation consultant and determined to serve disenfranchised women after partnering with a wonderful organization in Boston called Vital Village. Having nursed her own 5 children with little to no support, Melody is familiar with the complexities of breastfeeding as a Black woman and wanted to use herself and her experience to help and inspire other mothers. While she has over 16 years of cumulative practice breastfeeding experience, she has been providing breastfeeding support and counseling since 2016. She is committed to providing moms with the tools and confidence they need to overcome their breastfeeding obstacles and meet their breastfeeding goals by any means necessary. Thank you so much, Melody, also for raising the reality of racism in the form of bias, false stereotyping, and lack of culturally congruent support for mothers and families of colors. So the Vital Village Network and partnerships with Boston Breastfeeding Coalition is an example of partnership that is rooted in community determination. It's really great to see a successful project that has been able to partner with local organizations such as libraries and has seen so many benefits with such a deep relationship in the community. With that, I'm going to open it up to questions. Let me see here. It looks like we have a number of questions. So we also have comments. Great work, Vital Village. Thank you so much for this presentation. One of the first questions we wanted to open up with is, what would you all recommend to someone who wanted to recreate a program like this?
We recommend listening to the community. We recommend definitely finding out the needs and what best ways to support something like this. Also, you can reach out to Erica or myself anytime, and we'd be happy to have a discussion and help somebody out to navigate that.
And one of the things that is easy to do is to say, oh, this could work anywhere, but really there may already be solutions around breastfeeding support that exist. So if you orient yourself to be solution finding rather than problem solving, so if you're looking for the solutions, that really can often lead you to the people who are either really interested in this, have experience, or lived experience in this field too.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Another question that a couple of people are wondering about is funding. So where did funding come from for things like food and childcare, or just to fund the scholarship program?
Vital Village is all grant funded. So we, our main funder is the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation, and they have really put a lot of trust in our partnerships and our network leaders. So when this innovation got established in 2015, it became one of our signature programs because of the deep interest in the community and the scalability that we saw within the first couple of years.
As far as the summer meal program, that was something that was happening around Boston already, and we are just working in conjunction with them to bring that to our breastfeeding group. And if anyone knows of any funding, please send them our way.
Great, thank you so much. So another just clarification question, are you all a nonprofit?
Yes, we're a program of the Boston Medical Center. So Vital Village Network is housed within Boston Medical Center's pediatrics department. As our founder is a pediatrician with Boston Medical Center.
Okay, great.
And our founder, Melody, reminded me I should mention who she is. It's Dr. Renee Boynton-Jarrett, who has been super supportive of of the community leadership and continues to encourage and blossom relationships across the area and across the nation.
Okay, so another attendee here says, you mentioned the IBCLC certification as a job skill that scholars can take with them into across the country and even a private practice IBCLC. Do you have any statistics that reflect that kind of success? And are IBCLCs needing to have an LPN or RN license to succeed?
So we're actively working on creating IBCLCs. So that is something that going forward we'll be able to provide information on. But right now we have CLCs that are in practice and doing whatever they're doing. So we don't have that yet, but we're working on that.
And what we've heard is that it's much easier to be a nurse because you've already completed the course requirements and you're already in a clinical setting where you may be exposed to mentors more easily, which is one of the main barriers because many of our community members have lived experience but may not be already in a clinical role or have thought that that was going to be their destination for a career, but it's because they've been inspired by either their own experience or a friend or a family member's experience and want to really change outcomes for their community. And so what we have heard is that it's easier because the barriers are lower and the IBCLC system is very much set up with hoops to jump through. And for those who've already been in that type of profession, it is easier. However, it has also contributed to the lack of diversity in the field.
This is Kim Kinney. Miriam, there are a lot of other questions. Would you like me to read some?
Sure, thank you.
Okay, great. This is a question from, we've done a presentation, a webinar session with the B-Stars, Memphis breastfeeding sisters that are receiving support. And the question was that at some point in time, do you have plans for the Boston Breastfeeding Coalition to be its own standalone nonprofit so you could be primed for independent funding and projects and programs?
You know, we have thought a bit about that. There have been a couple of not spin-offs, but coalition members who have organized their own organizations, one being around spreading diverse photos of women breastfeeding. So they have started to create a database and have a model in which they hope to charge for the images so that funding can go back to the community as well. But we haven't yet explored for the coalition itself to be independent. There are a lot of benefits and also drawbacks probably of having its own independent status. Right.
Thank you. And then just a lot of comments about what a great partnership this is, and having the umbrella of the Vital Village and being so led by the scholars, and speed of trust is good. It really does then make sure that the ownership and the priorities of the scholars and the program and the stakeholders are really driving the process. So wonderful. In terms of partnerships, there's a question about partnerships. Are there, do you have any experience with partnering with faith organizations or others? And if so, could you share how you did that?
So the faith-based community is really strong here in Boston, and we have had a number of our scholars do individual outreach to their faith-based communities, but we haven't done anything coordinated. One of the main goals from the coalition this past year was to do more provider education, and so we have each year we try to target some of our goals. Last year we were partnering with fathers and grandparents, and this year we've been focused on working to do outreach with the provider community to make sure that hospital to community and home care are really deeply linked.
So we did have a faith-based organization reach out to us to come and have a table at their community baby shower event, where we were able to have our mothers go over there, and they have absolutely wonderful gifts for pregnant women. So there are some. There are some. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. We have one question which said that with the peer counselor services, I think wanting to know about Massachusetts in general, or whether through the partnership that you have with Boston Medical, are the peer counselor services and the work that's happening in your communities reimbursed at this point in time?
I'm so sorry, Kinkini. Can you please repeat that?
Other services that are happening in the community through this amazing program of the scholars, do the CLCs and the peer counselors get reimbursed for their work?
So our thought is that offering scholarship for the training is kind of the compensation. However, we have seen, and this is a new statistic within the last year, of the CLCs who have been, well, it's not just CLCs, but the peer counselors and certified lactation counselors who are facilitating some of the groups, they have been hired on at those partner sites. So I would say we have I think it's about 6 of our 20 or so volunteers at this point right now are paid per diem at their sites, but that was outside of Vital Village. So that was the sites themselves seeing the strong value in this program and the services that are offered through the baby cafes and baby support groups that they've decided to invest in the time of the peer scholars. But that is just a product of what kind of having long-standing relationships and having really well-trained and amazing scholars. So.
Thank you, Erica. And I think that was the question too, that was the intent of the question of the questioner too, that, after this training and things, how are they being absorbed into the workforce and other ways as well. Wonderful. So for folks who haven't seen, check out the website, Vital Village Network website. It's just wonderful. You'll see the kind of work that the organization does in systems transformations and in building communities of practice. And really, the mentorship program that you said was where you meet once a month with and it could be on any topic that the scholars and the peers are needing, or do you have a kind of a more formalized mentorship program?
So we meet, everything again is peer-led. We meet according to what the scholars ask for. We do have a monthly scholar meeting that we have, and again, when the CLC exam comes up, we have a meeting for that, and Scholar Support Nights is what it's called. It answers the needs of the scholars. So if it's monthly they need, it's monthly. If it's weekly they need, it's weekly. If it's bi-weekly, it truly is scholar run. So it's whatever is needed at that time.
And the thought of having somewhat of a structured curriculum of sorts, we haven't gotten there yet, though now that we have the IBCLC designation, we are going to, as part of kind of our longer term strategy, think about what it would mean to make sure that there are certain things that are, certain skills or examples that would be shown up on an IBCLC exam that get covered in those scholar support nights. So it could be coming, and if there are good examples, we'd be happy to connect with folks offline.
Right. Thank you. One other question about working with preceptors. And, Melody, you were so eloquent, and this is something that is so prevalent, seeing the degree of false narratives that is spread about communities of color and their ability or their interest or their willingness to breastfeed, and not instead of addressing the systemic and structural causes. So when you, with Vital Village, and this is a question for either one of you, Erica or Melody, when you're working with the scholars and thinking about their hours and their preceptors, how are you working? Are you working to on cultural congruent preceptors that actually have cultural humility and are able to bring that as they work with peers of color, and how is that process going? Because it's so important. We had Hakima Payne do a session here on the road to preceptorship that's paved with sometimes where your preceptors also shows so much bias to unconscious and conscious bias towards their mentees. And so is there some way that Vital Village and the coalition are working to work with preceptors as well?
Definitely something we keep in mind. We currently have a small-ish pool of IBCLCs who are interested in supporting ongoing mentorship. The IBCLCs who have been involved closely have participated in the Reaching Our Sisters Everywhere training, which really gets at the systemic inequities and the oppression that communities of color face when trying to breastfeed their babies. And so we are in communication about it and thinking about what trainings are needed. Everybody's coming at this journey from different points. And I would say that there's a lot that I see and have called out on some other white women in this field that is troublesome, that are blind spots for them. And I'm sure for myself too, I seek that out, I seek that feedback out. But it's definitely an area that we need to grow and need to challenge ourselves on, because we can only do so much and create safe spaces when we release our strong warriors out into the world. They are still existing in a world that is systemically racist. So there's a lot there, and a lot of undoing and a lot of trust building that needs to happen before strong mentorship practices can be put into place.
And thank you, Kinkini.
Thank you. Hakima Payne has done 2 amazing sessions on, preceptorship and how do we do that. So if we go into our archives, you will be, we'll post, we'll send it through the Coalition Learning Connection discussion forum too, but it's so very important to do that. But this has been an absolutely fabulous session. We have one, and I know we have 5 minutes more, but we have one question which says, can you share more information on the partnership with community colleges for the education, and what does that look like for the participants? Do they, any details that you can talk about your partnership?
Can you repeat the question?
It was about your share some details about your partnership with the community colleges. For the community college, you mentioned that's partnering for the education, and how does that look like for the participants?
This is a new partnership, so we're still exploring, but it started with one of our coalition members reaching out to the community college about the opportunity similar to the way that Melody has. So more to come, and we are working with our scholars to see what classes that they need, what classes that they have, so that we can then set them up with meetings with the community college.
Wonderful. So as you find out more, or if we continue this conversation on the discussion forum of other states, coalitions, local, and then organizations have examples of how you're doing these partnerships with community colleges, that would be great. So with that, thank you so much again, Melody and Erica, for absolutely fantastic session. We know that a lot of our folks who are registered will be listening to this again, and I apologize for the audio glitch that you had. So I'm glad we could hear you really well. I am going to move on to a few updates from our USBC team. So I'm going to invite our policy folks here, staff, Camille and Cheryl, to share.
Hi, everyone. This is Cheryl. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So we just wanted to give a quick plug and shout out. August is National Breastfeeding Month, and this year's theme is Support Changes Everything. We've developed 4 sub-themes that are focused on different particulars around that are supporting breastfeeding families. And while we really encourage folks to join the conversation and take action and release resources that are related to each of the themes, of course, any topic related to breastfeeding is encouraged to be mentioned throughout the month. If you look here, that very last link, usbreastfeeding.org/MBM19, that's a landing page, and you're going to find on that page all kinds of resources and tools and action opportunities compiled from all across the field. So we urge you to take a look. And if you go to the next slide, please, Miriam. We're also always looking for new submissions, new things to add onto our compilation. So please submit any additional items that you have to usbreastfeeding.org/submit. We'd love to feature your work. We also have weekly emails that are going out. Hopefully you saw the one last week, and I think just a little over an hour ago, we sent this week's email out focused on 5 easy actions that you can take this week to support breastfeeding families. We also host our Cafe Press store where you can buy all kinds of t-shirts and magnets and all kinds of good stuff around National Breastfeeding Month. And then we also just wanted to lift up very quickly, the members of Congress have introduced a new resolution to designate the first week of August as World Breastfeeding Week and the full week of August as National Breastfeeding Month. We think this is a really important resolution. While it's non-binding for Congress, it's something that we can use really effectively to point to say, senators, you've made this commitment to support breastfeeding families, and here is a bill where you can go forth and really honor that commitment you made. So we're really calling on the field to urge their members of Congress to support this National Breastfeeding Month resolution. And you can see here, usbreastfeeding.org/nbm-res-action to have our brand new easy action tool to urge your members of Congress to sponsor this resolution.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Cheryl and Kinkini. That brings us to the end of today's session. Thank you all once again, Erica and Melody, for such a great presentation. And thank you everyone for joining us and for the vital roles that you are all playing in improving maternal, infant, and child health throughout the country. Connect with us and stay tuned. As Cheryl mentioned, USBC will be sharing info and action ideas during National Breastfeeding Month. We hope that this session will spur ideas for collaborative action. Please complete the webinar after the webinar evaluation after this session and let us know how we're doing. Your suggestions are valued and help us design future sessions most relevant to you. You will also be receiving a certificate of attendance when you complete the evaluation. So goodbye for now, and we look forward to having you all for our next webinar.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thanks, everyone.